I want a selfie with Jimmy Houston.
Time for the Angler Within podcast with Roy Bilby.
Hey, and we're back.
Uh-huh.
How have you been?
I've been good. I've been well, as they would say. Things do good, people do well, and I've been well. Still on the mend, mending successfully though. Getting a few more degrees of bend in the knee every week or so.
Yep, moving in the right direction.
Physical therapy, it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah. Well, no pain, no gain.
As they say.
As they
say. Got out fishing yesterday with Mr. Matt.
And Bull, our buddy.
After we called you, you said we should go over to Canandaigua, so we did. Matt and I were able to get the kayaks launched off the trailer without issue and get them back on the trailer without issue.
That's awesome.
Which is pretty good. That was one shot, one kill. First attempt.
Yeah.
Works for me.
I'll never forget the first bass boat I had, which was the first power boat I had. I wanted my family with me. It was we're going back in time to 1990. All right. I bought a 1989 Bass Tracker Pro 17 aluminum rig, all the bells and whistles, carpeted decks, live well, flasher in the dash, had an LCR liquid crystal recorder unit on the front deck, and 40 horse Evinrude outboard. And I was big time, I thought, and so I'm driving to the lake. I have my wife with me. Both my kids were little in 1990. My son, who's been on the podcast, good grief. 4 years old. Okay. My daughter was 6. I wanted my family with me the first time I was in my first bass boat, and I went to Canandaigua. And
the windiest lake on the planet.
Well, it depends on the day, but yeah, it can get real windy. You haven't been on Oneida. Okay. That lake lies east and west, and our prevailing winds are out of the west, and there's not too many smooth days on that lake, but Canandaigua can be the same. But when the wind hits it, man, it gets choppy. Anyway, we put my boat in. I backed it in. My wife's holding the rope. I parked the trailer, hop in the boat, fire it up, and we take off. And I drove it I had to break it in. It was my initial trip, brand new engine, everything. But I wanted to fish. So we motored around the lake some, took a boat ride, more or less, and just put a little time on the outboard. And I did some fishing. And it wasn't until I was headed back to the ramp that it occurred to me for the very first time, oh, wait a minute. I've never driven a boat on a trailer before. And being a bass fisherman, there is no way I'm going to ride in a boat all day, perfectly dry, and then hop in the lake up to my waist and pull the boat up with a rope and then hook up the winch and try to do it that way. It's a drive-on trailer. I'm going to drive it on. So I pull up to the dock. We get out. I have my wife hold the boat. I back the trailer in. I get back in the boat, drive it on the trailer, hook up the bow strap, 5 clicks. It's all the way up. I pull the boat out onto the parking lot. It's sitting perfect on the trailer. I went, okay, that was easy. But it was a calm day. The very next time I had it out was Saratoga Lake. Put some more time on the motor just to break it in. And we ran it for an hour, and I got bored out of my mind. I bought this to fish out of, but it was a windy day, and I come back to the ramp then, and it's a weekend, and the ramp is busy. My partner backs the trailer in, and there's a crosswind. And I thought, piece of cake. Last time, I did it perfect. Took 3 tries. First 2 times I was on it sideways. It takes some experience. But now it's just second nature. It's like pulling my truck in the garage, putting a boat on the trailer. Been doing it 35 years. So I had a really, really cool thing happen to me in our last tournament. We're fishing the Mohawk River and we come up on this stretch. There's a lot of chestnut beds in the area we were fishing. And one of the best ways to put fish in the boat on this stretch, this is the Crescent Pool down in Waterford, New York. One of the best ways to put fish in the boat is to punch that chestnut. And we were prepared to do that. And I did that when I practiced and caught fish, but I also caught fish in 10 to 12 foot parallel to those chestnut beds. And I found a lot more fish running a deep crankbait doing that. So we pull up to this, this chestnut bed to do that. And there's a boat right where I want to stop. And there's 2 tournaments on that pool this day. When we pulled in, there was no parking spaces. There was another club there, big club, already launched and gone. And we were there at 5 a.m. So they probably took off at 4:30. Anyway, there's a boat right where I want to start. And there's a boat at the top of the stretch. So I told my partner, we're going to start in the middle. That way we don't cut anybody off. And we're going upriver. And the guy coming down towards us, once we got close enough to talk, he turned and he says, hey, if you guys want to work this, you're cool. I have no problem with that. And we said, no, we're going to stay out here in 10, 12 foot. That's where we located him in practice. He goes, okay. Then he turns to me and he says, keep doing what you're doing with your Instagram. It's good. I follow you on Instagram.
The guy recognized you just from seeing you?
Yeah. Well, when it's a tournament, I mean, I'm in my nitro. I got my jersey on, which matches my boat.
Right.
And I do post a lot of pictures from, when I pre-fish in that boat. So probably noticed the jersey in the boat and got wrecked. It's just really cool to get good feedback, but, encouraging feedback, but to get it in the middle of a tournament from a guy I never met before. So whoever you were, if you're listening, you made my day. Now, I want to get back into disseminating information. We've gotten into storytelling, which is all well and good, and it's good conversation. But I want to talk about topwater fishing and put a lot of information out on that, because right now we're coming into the end of July and topwater is happening. And this topwater bite is going to last right into October. So this is going to be good current information, some old stuff, some new stuff, and the way I do certain things and what I think will help a lot of people. And the first thing I want to throw out there is if you're going to fish topwater, you're going to be far better off either going with old-fashioned monofilament or with a braid. Do not use fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon sinks. Braid and monofilament float. If you're giving a topwater presentation, you don't want your line pulling the nose of your bait down. That is not what you want. So that being said, I'm going to throw some old timers at you, JD. A guy named James Hedden made Hedden Lures. Have you ever heard of a Hedden crazy crawler?
Not a crazy crawler, no.
Okay. How about, here's one. Everybody knows about Fred Arbogast, the jitterbug.
Of course, with the big wide mouth. I got a bunch of them.
Okay. Jitterbug, egg-shaped plug, a metal plate on the front with cupped on both sides. It just, plop, 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 plop. It's got great action. The crazy crawler was similar, but you could get a little bit more casting distance with it. And I think it was very similar to a jitterbug. It had 2 metal wings that were pinned and hinged on the sides of the bait, which was more of a cigar-shaped bait. The jitterbug was a little bit more oval and wider. The crazy crawler was not as wide. It was, like I said, more of a short cigar shape, but mid-body, it had 2 metal wings that were pinned, and they were on hinges. So when you threw the lure, those wings folded and didn't cause wind resistance. But when you pulled the bait towards you, they opened, and it would have an action almost identical to the jitterbug, except the bill that caught the water and made it go side to side, instead of being on the face of the lure like the jitterbug, they were mid-body. So you got a little bit more of an aggressive wobble. And the great thing about the crazy crawler and the jitterbug, which I think the jitterbug is, I don't know if it's still in production or not, but both of these baits, I guarantee you can find on Amazon or what's the other place? I don't use it.
eBay?
eBay. There you go. Thank you. Yeah, just showing my age. But you can find both of those baits. I'm sure eBay, Amazon, I'm sure they're out there. eBay, you'll probably pay a lot for them, and they're not rare at all. I guarantee you they still catch fish. And where these baits really excelled is where you had a chop on the surface or a lot of water movement because they made so much commotion. That's what made them really good. They drew a lot of attention to themselves, like the whopper plopper of today. That's something you want to use when the water's choppy because it makes so much commotion. That's just a modern version, although it's built entirely different. How about the Zera Spook? You remember
Of course, yes.
Okay.
I've got those.
Still in production. When I use a top water like a Zera Spook or the venerable Hedden Tiny Torpedo, that was again a cigar-shaped bait, very stubby and short, had two little metal propellers, fore and aft, one just ahead of the line or just behind the line tie, and one off a little dome before the rear treble hook. And it had a treble hook in the center. I cannot tell you how many fish I caught in the 80s on that tiny torpedo. And I still have them in my arsenal because I don't think anybody throws them anymore. But fish still bite them. Dynamite on smallmouth and largemouth both. It works on both of them. But the propellers are pretty tiny. So that's not something that you want to use in a chop. You want the waters to be fairly calm. You want it to be at best a slight ripple. You want it to be one of those mornings or evenings where you look at the surface and you go, oh man, this is just screaming throw a top water.
What do you think of these newer top waters, like from like Lunker Hunt and whatnot, of the, a lot of rat baits? I have a mouse I'm excited to use.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on those?
Big fish baits. And you use them around heavy slop and surface clutter and stuff like that. That's where I would use the rat. I wouldn't use it in open water. I'd use it around lily pads. When something comes in the water and is trying to navigate across the surface, the size of that plug, which is designed to imitate, I don't know, like a little tiny muskrat or a rat or something like that, a little creature that should not be in the water or trying to get out of Dodge before somebody realizes it's part of the cafeteria selection, So I would fish that around wood and logs and laydowns and any kind of surface cover like lily pads, cheese mats, stuff like that. In a river where you got an inside bend with a rock pile or something where a bunch of debris catches in an eddy area, that would be the ideal place to throw that bait in a river. Now, and I talked about using monofilament or braid. A lot of times with a surface lure, I use a fast lock snap from Berkeley or a cross lock snap, a bass snap, not a snap swivel, just a straight snap to facilitate changing lures in a second. And if you prefer to tie direct, I suggest using a loop knot to your line tie because it's going to do the same thing my fast lock snap does. It gives that lure full range of motion. You don't necessarily want to clinch it right down tight on the eye of that lure. With the exception of a Zera Spook, I do want my knot tied tight to a Zera Spook, and I'm using either a clinch knot or a Palomar knot to cinch that line right down tight to that line tie. And the reason I say that is I walk the dog with a Zera Spook. It's a technique that takes a little bit of practice, but it's not hard to do. You throw it out, let it settle, and then I'm a drummer, so I have coordination. I could chew gum and walk at the same time, okay? But I can do it with my hands. So with your bait casting rod, you're reeling it, but you're snapping the rod. You're lifting it and snapping it down, lifting it and snapping it down as you reel sporadically. You're not reeling constantly as you do that. You lift and snap, reel, lift and snap, reel, like that. You develop a cadence. What that does is it throws slack at that lure. When you lift it and snap it, it pulls the lure forward and creates slack. And then you pick it up and snap it again. And what that does is it causes that bait to walk left, right, left, right, left, right. That's why they call it walking the dog. But that's that's how you do that technique. And it just takes a little practice. It's easy to develop a cadence. Once you do that, you'll get very proficient at walking the dog. But if you haven't done it before, after about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you're going to go, man, I'm going to try something else because my arms are sore. It takes a while to develop the muscle memory to where you can do that all day if you need to, if it's a day when the top water bite just won't quit. So I would recommend people, if they want to use the Zara Spook, learn how to walk the dog with it. And you can walk the dog with a tiny torpedo too, but it's a much shorter bait. So I do a lot shorter snaps. Most of the time with a tiny torpedo, it's a subtle bait for when you have a slight ripple or just glass calm water. And I just do it in little pulls, and those propellers spin, and it just gives a little burst, and it draws attention to itself. And you'd be surprised how many times it gets hit when it's just sitting still. You talked about the rats. Good time to talk about topwater frogs. And we touched on that a podcast or two ago when we were talking about cheese mats and how to fish them. We're talking the hollow body frogs here that have the silicone skirt pulled through the body to form the two legs that has the double hook that presses against the body. And they're hollow, so when a bass grabs it, it collapses that body and those hooks are ready to grab hold. That's another one where I'll probably tie direct to it. But when you throw it across those mats, those algae mats, the advantage is as you drag it across and pop it and snap it, if you walk the dog with that, it'll draw a lot more attention up on top. It'll cause a lot more disturbance on the surface and help fish locate it. So that's what we do a lot of the time with those hollow-bodied frogs. And the beauty of those is when you get to an open area, you can just kill it. Sometimes you'll have a fish blow up on it, and that creates a hole in that mat. And you can see, if he does not get the bait, you can see where it was. And you can crank in and throw past that and bring it right up to it and then kill it in that hole, that clear water hole now, and just hold your breath. 50% of the time, they're going to explode on it again. But you know it's coming, so you're ready. And the advantage of using braid, this was taught to me by one of my tournament partners, Ryan Coulter. You should really, really use braid when you're fishing a hollow body frog. And the reason we say that, you're going to get a lot better hook set. And below those algae mats, there's all kinds of vegetation that's holding it there, that's holding that algae there. And you need something strong to get them out of that vegetation. And monofilament, in a lot of cases, does not cut it. Too much stretch. With the braid, you have zero stretch, which also helps tremendously with a top water bite on a frog. Too many people, when they see the explosion, not just on a frog, but on any kind of top water strike, when you see it, you tend to just react and set the hook. One of the hardest things to do in bass fishing is hesitate when you see that strike until you feel the fish. With braid, you're going to feel that fish a lot quicker and be able to react because there's no stretch. So you're going to feel the strike quicker and you're going to sink the hook a lot quicker. So braid is extremely advantageous when you're fishing a hollow-bodied topwater frog. I don't use mono for that. We fished a tournament on Lake Champlain years ago. Ryan Coulter was using braid on his frog. I was using monofilament on mine because I hadn't switched over to braid yet. He had. Guess who put the bass in the boat? We both got a lot of strikes. He put every fish in the boat. I ran the net. I missed everything. He said, "You're using mono, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You got to use braid for this." He taught me that. And he was right. So word to the wise. This is the whole, like we always say, the whole point of this is to shorten the learning curve. So there's a big one right there. If you're still using mono on a frog, switch to braid. You will not believe the difference. Your strike to hookup ratio will go up exponentially when you switch to braid. Speaking
of strike to hookup ratio with a frog,
yeah.
Why does the frog come out so many times? Because you say that, but I'll tell you what, I've never had more baits pop out of a fish's mouth as when I fish for bass with a topwater frog.
The reason for that, and I firmly believe this. Now, I had just said you've got a lot of vegetation. It's not just surface cover. There's thick vegetation there. That's what holds that mat in place. It's caught on the top of that vegetation that's trying to top out on the surface. So you've got a bass down there in this dense jungle with a thick mat over top of it. And if you're not walking the dog with that frog retrieve, you're not going to get as many strikes because you got to make commotion for them to locate it. But they're trying to locate it in a dense jungle with a thick overhead canopy. A lot of the time, they're only getting a piece of it. It's not like the water's clear and calm and unobstructed and they can see perfectly what's up there. They're trying to locate it too and home in on it. So it's because their accuracy is impaired by the dense vegetation that they're in and the thick mat that's over the top of it. They're doing the best they can. It's not your fault. I think a lot of them are farsighted. So that's I see you smiling. I who remembers the Rebel Pop-R? Have you heard of Pop-R?
No, Pop-R I haven't heard of, no.
Okay, Pop-R.
Pop-R.
I don't know why they called it that.
As opposed to a Pop-Eye.
Yeah, that was not a lure.
No, that was a joke that failed miserably.
Yeah. We need a foghorn effect. It's the Rebel Pop-R, probably short for Popper.
Pop-R.
So it had a concave face and a belly hook, treble hook, and a tail treble hook that was dressed with hair, not feathers, but with hair. Very effective. And this is going back. This gentleman was from Texas. His name was Zell Rowland. He was one of the best of all time topwater anglers ever. When asked about the greatest topwater angler of all time, Zell Rowland is the guy that really comes to most people's mind, especially older guys like me who were following the tournament circuit in the 70s and 80s.
Because I'll tell you what, because the
early 90s.
That didn't pop in my mind just now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we got some old time listeners, but he almost won the Bassmaster Classic using a topwater Pop-R. But
Pop-R.
What he did, he tricked his out. What he did was he would buy them in bulk, and he would take those lures and he would make the mouth of it more concave and sand the edge sharp. It had a blunt edge. He would sand it sharp, and it made a louder pop, a louder cupping noise when he popped it. And he would dress his with chicken feathers. He would hand tie his treble hooks with chicken feathers as opposed to the stiff hair that came on it originally from the manufacturer. The reason being, if you've seen the very fine feathers off a chicken, like off their breast, when they're wet and you're in the water, when you kill that bait, those feathers just keep moving. They have a life of their own. Not only would his Pop-Rs make more noise on the surface, but when he killed them and the lure sat still, those feathers would just come alive. And he was actually having people buy the ones he had hand doctored up himself. And then he signed a contract with Rebel Lures, and they came out with the Zell Pop, and they made it to his specifications, and they sold a ton of them.
Pop-R, Zell Pop.
They were
Zell
not
Pop.
Not Popeyes.
Popeye.
So they are a very effective topwater lure. Incidentally, Zell Rowland is the one that taught us that with a buzzbait, you can make them even more effective if you drill a few holes in the blade, because it leaves more of a bubble trail and it has a different sound. A lot of guys in the early days would take their buzz baits and they would tape them to their back when this is going back, cars actually had radio antennas. Guys driving to tournaments would tape their buzz baits to the top of their car antenna so that blade would spin like crazy when they're driving 60 miles an hour down the road. And what it would do is it would cause a little bit of wear on that wire arm. It would cut a groove so that when you ran that buzz bait through the water, it would make a squealing noise. And they felt that that would help attract fish. But if you drill holes in the blades, just a simple drill bit, and drill like 4 holes in each side of the blade, when you bring that through the water, it's going to leave a tremendous bubble trail, more so than a solid blade. And Zell Rowland is the one that taught that. Back when I was going to seminars, I saw him, and that's one of the tips he gave out. My son was at that seminar too, and I'm sure he remembers it. So Zell Rowland, tremendous top water fisherman that he was known for that. But now we've got the Whopper Plopper. You're familiar with that. That's been around for a while now.
Very. We've talked about it before.
Well, let me give you a little history on that. You may not know this.
You're going to start talking to me about the Chapo?
I'm getting to that.
El Chapo.
The Whopper Plopper was originally a saltwater lure and was introduced to the bass fishing world by Bassmasters Classic champion Chris Lane, a Florida guy who did a lot of saltwater fishing. For whatever reason, he had a dirty little secret. He took the smallest size saltwater Whopper Plopper topwater lure that they used to use on the bonefish flats and stuff like that, and he used it for bass fishing. And bass had never seen that. And he won a tournament using that and just absolutely loaded the boat. And then the next thing you know, everybody's buying Whopper Ploppers and they start making them in bass sizes. And it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And we're going back in time to like the jitterbug and the crazy crawler that we talked about when we started talking about topwater lures. They make a lot of commotion. The Whopper Plopper does the same thing. It makes a lot more commotion than a buzzbait, and it just draws a lot of attention. The Berkeley Chapo is their version of a Whopper Plopper style bait that has a midsection with 2 fins that rotates as you bring it through the water. It stays on top and just makes a tremendous amount of commotion and draws attention to itself. Perfect when we've got choppy water and windy conditions and you just can't find any more, jitterbugs on eBay. So there you go. Have you used the Whopper Plopper or a Chapo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you gave me a Chapo.
Yeah, I know that.
I've used it. I did have a couple, and I think I have one left. And they either get stuck in trees or bushes, or that's where they've ended up.
Well, this happens. Now and there's a lot more top water lures out there. These are just a few. And we talked about like the tiny torpedo in good calm conditions. You've got a buzzbait for moderate conditions. And years ago, people just used a buzzbait straight by itself with the skirt that came on it. Nowadays, you hardly ever see people doing that. They're always putting on a buzz toad or a horny toad or some kind of soft plastic topwater frog that you would rig with a worm hook. Those are great presentations by themselves if you're fishing lily pads and stuff like that. But if you stop it in a hole, it's going to drop down. Those you pretty much have to keep moving to get the legs to kick. And it's like using a buzz bait, but it's a soft plastic body. What people are doing now and have been doing for the last bunch of years is removing the skirts on their buzz baits and putting like a zoom horny toad or a buzz toad or some kind of soft plastic frog on, not as a trailer, but as the body of the lure. And now you have the commotion of the blade and the kicking of the legs, and the fish seem to bite them even better because they hone in on those legs kicking down just below the surface. So there's a tip. If you're not doing that with your buzz baits, try it.
Maybe you should.
It works. It works. But the best thing to put on is one of those soft-bodied, topwater, solid plastic frogs, because they have a flat belly and they'll keep the buzz bait with the blades on the surface and with the legs hanging just below the surface where that fish is going to strike. But there's one more lure I want to mention before we get off the subject, and it is overlooked nowadays. It is one of the fish catchingest lures that ever hit the American market. It came out in the 60s. It has never lost popularity. And I'm talking about the original floating Rapala minnow. Tremendous topwater lure, especially when conditions are relatively calm, because you can throw it out there and snap it. It'll go just below the surface and it'll pop right back up. And you can work it to make it look like a bait fish that's struggling on the surface. Use a black back with the foil side, and you'll get a lot of flash with that presentation as well.
So in your time on Canada-Rago, when you've been out there this time of year,
yeah,
what fish is smashing the surface? I didn't think it was a carp.
Carp will do that too. That lake has got some gigantic carp in it. We've caught them. We've seen them cruising the shallows.
I was hoping it was like a giant brown. Have you caught a giant brown out there before?
Nope.
But they're in there allegedly.
Well, allegedly, you'd have to prove it to me. I've never seen them.
Have you caught walleye in there?
Yeah, I've caught 2 over 7 pounds out of that lake.
Yeah. Were you trolling for them? Were you down deep?
We were actually fishing for walleye, yes.
Yeah.
But one of them, was December 15th. The lake froze on the 18th. We were there for the walleye, and we caught 36 walleye that day. There were 8 of them that were over 4 pounds. There were 15 that were over 3 pounds. There was a 5, a 6, and I caught one that was 7.4. And we were, matter of fact, that you bring it up, we were using a number 13 original floating Rapala. Not kidding. Black, silver sides. It's the first one that goes to 3 treble hooks. But the water was cold. We were fishing in 8 foot over top of the vegetation that was almost gone. So you had clear water over the top of it. And these big walleye were patrolling these weed beds, feeding up heavy because winter's coming. And you had to throw it as far as you could and do about a half speed straight retrieve. The most boring retrieve ever. You're basically crawling it just below the surface. If you imparted any snaps or action, you did not get bit. But if you just reeled that thing like 1/3 to half speed, or just a straight, steady retrieve in slow motion, they would like to yank that rod out of your hand. It was incredible. And that was Canada-Rago. We were not using it as a surface lure. This was December, and we were keeping it just below the surface, but it was not making contact with the grass, and the walleye were over top of that grass, and it was the perfect storm. What a day we had. And 3 days later, you couldn't get on the ice. My partner tried and almost lost his car in the lake because there was ice on the ramp, but he wanted to get out there one more time. So getting back to using the floating Rapala as a surface lure, I think it's often overlooked nowadays, and it's still a dynamite presentation. Throw it out, pop it, snap it, but constantly kill it and let it float back to the surface. And that's another one that's going to get slammed before you move it again. But with those treble hooks, you ought to feel the fish right away. That's my brief synopsis on topwater fishing. There is one more thing I want to throw out there. And again, this topwater bite is lasting now all the way into October. As we get later in the year, halfway through September into October, it's still going to work, but it's more of a morning and evening deal. And it's the juice on many, many days. So keep that in mind. Do not overlook the opportunities. I want to throw out here, for people that live in our area here in New York and the Northeast, there's a brand new Bass Pro Shops in Clifton Park, New York, that is having its grand opening. We're starting Wednesday night with the evening of conservation. They were only open from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. for 3 hours, and they actually open for good the very next day. So Wednesday, July 29th, 6 to 9, that store will be open, and they have an all-star lineup. Jimmy Houston will be the MC.
What?
He will be the master.
Okay, so we all right. Roy,
you didn't know this.
I need to meet Jimmy Houston. I need to be with you at this. We need to be there doing something with this.
Oh, I'm going to be there.
I know you're going to be there. You're going to be bragging me in there with you, and I'm going to meet Jimmy Houston. That's what's going to happen here. I won't fan out. I won't be a fanboy. I just want to meet him.
Listen to this star-studded lineup. Jimmy Houston is the master of ceremonies. They're going to have the Marines present the colors. Johnny Morris will be there. Roland Martin, Kevin Van Dam, Chris Johnson. If you don't know who he is, he was last year's 2024 Bassmaster Elite Series Angler of the Year, a Canadian guy, sponsored by Bass Pro Shops. Chris Johnson, Angler of the Year. Jimmy Houston has 2 of those titles. Kevin Van Dam has 7 of them. Roland Martin has 9 of them. I don't have any, but I'm still going to be there.
Right, but are you going to have, like, are they going to have you, like, as, like, a VIP, like, be able to do stuff that other people aren't going to be able to do, or are you just going to be one of us consumers?
I'm going to be there to support the grand opening. I don't have anything scheduled for the evening of conservation. They have the whole program already planned.
Okay.
So I'm not going to get in the way of that. There's stuff going on.
I'm a little miffed they don't have Angler Within on that star-studded lineup. We should have Angler Within on that lineup. Jimmy Houston, Roland Martin, Johnny Morris, Van Dam, and of course Roy Bilby and JD from the Angler Within podcast.
From the Angler Within. Those guys are going to be there.
Holy crap! Get them security.
Thursday and Friday, I will be there in the store most of the day, just in a support role, meeting customers. I'm not doing any of my demos. That's going to be Saturday and Sunday, August 1st and 2nd. But it is their grand opening, blowout sales. I've been in the store. It's beautiful. It is not an outpost. It's a full-blown outdoor world. I've been up on top of the tank. They showed me my workspace, and there's a huge floor space in front of the tank from my table and a large crowd. So I can't wait to get in that store and do what I do. And I'll be doing it Saturday and Sunday, August 1st and 2nd. And then I'll be back in Bridgeport, Connecticut at the end of the month, Saturday and Sunday, August 30th and 31st. John Apino, my buddy, that's when I'll be back in Bridgeport. And I hope to see you there.
I want a selfie with Jimmy Houston. That's what I want.
I'm sure he will do that.
A selfie with Jimmy Houston. That would really make my day. If I can get within earshot, we can get this done.
You will. He's very accommodating. I've been around Jimmy 3-4 times. He'll bend over backwards to please everybody. You'll get that.
You're my ticket in.
You'll have the opportunity. You don't even need me for that. If you're there will be a line and he'll accommodate everybody.
All right. I'm going to get a soundbite of him saying, "Hey, this is Jimmy Houston, and when I'm in Clifton Park, I listen to the Angler Within podcast with Roy Bilby."
Dare to dream.
In the meantime, slide into Roy's DMs at all lowercase Roy Bilby on Instagram.
And as always, we are here to disseminate 40 years of record keeping to shorten your learning curve and help you tap into your
Angler Within.
Giddy up.